They thought I'd disappear quietly after that termination email on my 50th birthday. But when the $2.3 billion deal collapsed before their eyes, I was the only one holding the key. And just 15 minutes later, I handed everything to their rival, who made me CEO. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's the sound of your name being read aloud on every page of the contract they tried to erase you from. My name is Margot Ellis, and I spent 23 years building the digital backbone of Nevera Core Tech. On the morning of my 50th birthday, I discovered they'd locked me out. No warning email, no awkward meeting with HR. Just a simple authentication error when I tried to log into the Argent framework, the infrastructure processing system I'd designed from scratch. The same system that handled every major public contract flowing through our servers. I sat in my home office, staring at the error message while my coffee grew cold. The birthday cards from my team, the ones they'd slipped under my door yesterday, mocked me from the corner of my desk. At 7:47 a.m., my personal email pinged. Subject: Organizational Restructuring Initiative. No happy birthday, Margot. No, thank you for your decades of service. Just corporate doublespeak about optimizing our talent pipeline and aligning resources with future-forward objectives. Signed by someone I'd never heard of from the Transformation Committee. I knew exactly who was behind this. Landon Price, 36 years old, MBA from Wharton, and our new deputy director as of 6 months ago. He spoke in TED Talk soundbites and wore those ridiculous clear-frame glasses that screamed, "Disruptor." In his first all-hands, he'd called our core systems legacy bloat while standing in front of a slide that said, "Move fast and break things." What he didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that some things shouldn't be broken. I pulled up my personal laptop and accessed my archived emails. There it was, dated 3 weeks ago. Landon's proposal to outsource system architecture to a nimble startup run by his former roommate. The board had asked for my assessment. I'd been honest, perhaps too honest, about the security risks and the millions it would cost to untangle our existing infrastructure. Now I understood. I wasn't fired for being 50. I was fired for being in the way. My phone buzzed. Sarah, one of my junior engineers, texting frantically. Margot, your access badges were deactivated. Security won't let you into the building. What's happening? I started to type a response, then stopped. What could I say? That 2 decades of loyalty meant nothing? That building something with your own hands gave you no claim to it? Instead, I opened a different window, one that showed the real-time status of our largest pending contract, New Camden's $2.3 billion infrastructure modernization project. Due for final validation in 72 hours. They thought they could erase me like a line of obsolete code. But I wasn't just any engineer. I was the architect, and architects always keep a master key. I closed my laptop and walked to my window, watching the morning sun paint Nevera's glass towers in the distance. Somewhere in that building, Landon was probably celebrating his successful optimization. He had no idea what he'd just set in motion. 3 weeks before my termination, I sat in conference room Atlas while Landon Price dismantled my life's work with a laser pointer. This is what's holding us back, he said, circling a diagram of the Argent framework on the screen. Legacy architecture, monolithic, inflexible. It's like we're trying to run a Formula One race with a steam engine. The board members nodded along, hypnotized by his buzzwords. I watched their faces, people who'd once called me the backbone of Nevera, now looking at my system like it was a disease to be cured. Ms. Ellis. Landon turned to me with that practiced smile. When was the last major update to this framework? 6 months ago, I replied evenly. We implemented quantum-resistant encryption and reduced processing time by 30%. But the core architecture is, 15 years old? The foundation is solid. We've built on... Exactly my point. He clicked to the next slide, a comparison chart that conveniently ignored our 99.97% uptime and 0 security breaches. Growth Stack Industries can rebuild this entire system. Cloud native, AI integrated, future-proof. Growth Stack, his roommate's company. I'd done my research, 2 years old, 14 employees, and their biggest project to date was a scheduling app for food trucks. The new Camden contract relies on our current infrastructure, I said. Any migration would need. We'll handle the transition after securing the contract. Landon's dismissal was sharp. No need to complicate things with technical details. Technical details, like the fact that the Argent framework contained over 3 million lines of custom code, each function interwoven with the next like neural pathways. Like the biometric validation protocols I'd built into the contract system, protocols that required my personal encryption key for any modifications over $100 million. After the meeting, I returned to my office and pulled up the new Camden contract files. Something was wrong. The code signatures showed recent modifications by users I didn't recognize. Junior developers, hired in Landon's Fresh Talent Initiative, were attempting to patch together a new validation system. I dove deeper. Their code was a mess. SQL injections waiting to happen. Authentication bypasses that would make any security auditor weep. But the worst part was a timing error in the validation sequence. If triggered, it would mark the entire contract as fraudulent, voiding the agreement instantly. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could report this, I could escalate, I could fight, or I could fix it silently, the way I'd fixed 1,000 problems before. Keep the ship sailing smooth while the officers plotted mutiny. I chose silence. But this time, I did something else. I created 2 versions of the contract. The first was the official one, sitting in Novera's main servers, complete with the junior developer's flawed code. The second was a shadow copy, hidden in a partition only I knew existed, with clean code and an additional security layer, a biometric lock that would activate 72 hours before the filing deadline. Then I documented everything, every line of bad code, every security vulnerability, every meeting where Landon dismissed technical details. I encrypted it all and stored it in 3 locations: my personal server, a blockchain ledger, and an old-fashioned safety deposit box. The next morning, I watched from my office as Landon gave another presentation, this time to the new Camden City officials. He stood there in his Italian suit, promising them seamless integration and next-generation infrastructure. Behind him, the screens showed my system, my architecture, rebranded with GrowthStack's logo. We're not just offering a service, he said. We're offering a partnership with the future. The officials seemed impressed. Why wouldn't they be? They didn't know that the beautiful dashboard Landon was showing them was running on code held together with digital duct tape and prayers. They didn't know that in 60 days, when the first real stress test hit, the entire system would likely collapse. But I knew. And I'd made sure that when it happened, my fingerprints would be nowhere near the wreckage. That night, I stayed late, making one final adjustment to the shadow contract. A single line of code, elegant in its simplicity. If validation, attempt bakitius true and architect key baristis null, then display awaiting architect validation, M. Ellis. They could take my badge, they could take my title, but they couldn't take my signature from the foundation of everything they were trying to steal. The steam engine Landon mocked. It was about to show him exactly how much power old technology could generate when the pressure finally became too much to contain. The celebration was scheduled for Thursday at 3 p.m. Novera had rented out the top floor of the Meridian Tower, complete with champagne fountains and a jazz quartet. The email invitation called it a historic partnership. Novera and New Camden building tomorrow. I watched from my apartment, monitoring the system logs on 3 different screens. They'd locked me out of the building, but they'd forgotten about the diagnostic backdoor I'd built into Argent, not for sabotage, but for emergencies. Today qualified, at 2:47 p.m., I watched Landon's team upload the final contract package to New Camden's validation servers. The progress bar crept forward, 67%, 78%, 92%. Complete. In the Meridian Tower, champagne corks were probably popping. Landon was likely giving his speech about innovation and transformation. The mayor of New Camden would be shaking hands. Photographers capturing the moment for tomorrow's headlines. They had no idea they'd just uploaded a ghost. The shadow contract I'd created sat dormant in the system's deep architecture, waiting. The official contract, the one they'd just submitted, looked perfect on the surface. All the digital signatures were in place. The financial structures aligned. Every checkbox ticked. But contracts worth $2.3 billion don't just need to look right. They need to be validated through 7 different authentication protocols. And the 6th protocol, buried on page 847 of the technical specifications, required biometric confirmation from the system architect for any infrastructure contract exceeding $100 million. That was me. Even fired, even erased from the org chart. The system still recognized my biometric signature as the architect of record. At 4:15 p.m., New Camden's automated validation system began its review. I watched the logs scroll past. Protocol 1. Financial verification. Past Protocol 2. Legal compliance. Past Protocol 3. Security clearance. Past Protocol 4. Technical specifications. Past Protocol 5. Vendor authentication. Past Protocol 6. Architect validation. Pending, and there it stopped. The system waited patiently for my biometric confirmation. Without it, the contract would remain in limbo, technically submitted but not legally binding. The validation window was 72 hours. After that, the contract would auto-reject, and New Camden would be free to choose another vendor. My phone started buzzing. Sarah, my former junior engineer. Margot, something's wrong with the Camden validation. It's asking for your biometric. I didn't respond. 20 minutes later, another text, this one from James in IT. Hey, Em, weird question, but did you build some kind of architect lock into the validation system? Landon's freaking out. Still, I stayed silent. By 6 p.m., I knew panic was setting in at Novera. The diagnostic logs showed dozens of attempts to bypass the validation requirement. They tried admin overrides, system resets, even attempting to spoof my biometric signature using old personnel files. Each attempt failed, generating an error log that would be very interesting to auditors later. The beautiful thing about the shadow contract was its elegance. I hadn't hacked anything. I hadn't destroyed data or planted malware. I'd simply used the security protocols I'd designed, protocols Landon had called outdated and unnecessarily complex, exactly as they were intended. At 9:43 p.m., an unknown number called. I let it go to voicemail. Margot, this is Landon Price. We need to talk about the Camden contract. There seems to be a technical glitch with the validation. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Call me back, please. Technical glitch, not we need your help or we made a mistake. Just a glitch to be solved. I pulled up the shadow contract on my personal system. With 3 keystrokes, I could validate it, save Novera's deal, prove I was the bigger person, the team player. Instead, I opened a different file, the contract template for Vertexis Global, our biggest competitor, Graham Novak's company. Graham and I had worked together as junior engineers 20 years ago, before he left to build his own firm. We'd stayed in touch, holiday cards, the occasional coffee when he was in town. He'd tried to recruit me several times over the years. Margot, he'd said last Christmas, you know you're worth more than they're paying you, not just in money, in respect. I'd laughed it off then. I wasn't laughing now. The Camden contract hung in digital purgatory, a $2.3 billion prize waiting for someone to claim it. Novera had 71 hours and counting to figure out how to validate without me. I pulled up Graham's number and typed a simple message. Interested in discussing that offer. And I might have a gift to bring to the table. The system was patient. It would wait exactly as long as I'd programmed it to wait. But I was done waiting. The morning after the failed validation. Novera removed my name from everything. My parking spot became reserved executive staff. The conference room I'd named after Ada Lovelace was rechristened Innovation Hub Delta. 23 years of company newsletters vanished from the archive. Every mention of my contributions scrubbed clean. Even the patent filings, my patents, suddenly listed Novera Core Tech Development Team as the inventor. They thought they were erasing me. They were actually setting me free. I met Graham Novak at a small cafe downtown, one of those places with exposed brick and pour-over coffee that took 15 minutes. He looked the same as always, silver at the temples now, but still wearing those ridiculous cartoon tie clips his daughter made him. Today's was a tiny rocket ship. "Margot," he said, studying my face, "what did they do to you?" "They optimized me out." I stirred my coffee slowly. "Apparently, I'm a legacy system." "Idiots." The word came out sharp, angry. "Do they have any idea what they've thrown away?" "They're about to." I explained the situation, the failed validation, the 72-hour window, the biometric lock that only I could release. Graham listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled under his chin. "The new Camden contract," he said finally. "We bid on that. Lost to Novera by 2%. You could bid again, if it goes back to market. Could we?" His eyes sharpened. "Or are you suggesting something else?" I pulled out my tablet and showed him the technical specifications. Not Novera's flawed version, but the real architecture, the one I'd designed, refined, and perfected over 2 decades. Every integration point, every security protocol, every line of code that made the Argent framework hum. "This is my system," I said. "Built with my knowledge, my expertise, my time. They can remove my name from the org chart, but they can't remove my DNA from the code." "You're proposing we implement Argent at Vertexis?" "I'm proposing you hire the architect. The system comes with her." Graham was quiet for a long moment. Around us, the cafe buzzed with startup founders pitching investors, freelancers typing furiously, the whole ecosystem of people building things that mattered to them. "What would you need?" he asked. "Full autonomy over infrastructure, my team, the ones who actually understand the system. And when New Camden opens bidding again, we go in with a proposal they can't refuse." "And Novera?" "We'll discover what happens when you optimize out your foundation." That afternoon, while Novera's engineers frantically tried to crack my biometric lock, I sat in my attorney's office. Turns out, when you document everything, every meeting, every email, every code commit, you build a very strong case for intellectual property ownership. The Argent framework predated my employment contract with Novera. I'd licensed it to them, not sold it. My phone buzzed constantly. Messages from former colleagues, increasingly desperate. "Margot, please, the team needs you." "This is bigger than personal feelings. You're destroying everything we built." That last one made me laugh. Destroying? I wasn't the one who'd called my work legacy bloat. I wasn't the one who'd hired unqualified developers to Frankenstein my code. I wasn't the one who'd sent a termination email on someone's 50th birthday. By evening, the messages changed tone. Legal threats, cease and desist warnings, claims that I was violating my non-compete agreement. My attorney, a woman who'd cut her teeth on Silicon Valley warfare, smiled as she read them. "They're scared. Good. Scared people make mistakes." 48 hours remained on the validation clock. Novera's stock had started to dip as rumors spread about technical difficulties with the Camden contract. Tech blogs speculated about security breaches, failed implementations, leadership turmoil. I turned off my phone and opened my laptop. There was work to do. Real work. The kind that built things instead of tearing them down. Graham had already set up my new Vertexis email account. Director of Infrastructure Architecture, reporting directly to the CEO. In my inbox, welcoming messages from engineers who understood the value of experience, who knew that some systems, like some people, only got better with age. At Novera, they were probably pulling all-nighters, trying to reverse engineer what I'd built. Landon was likely pacing his glass office, watching his grand transformation crumble. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them finally understand that optimization without wisdom was just destruction with a business degree. The clock kept ticking. 47 hours. 46. The sound of my name being erased from Novera's history had been meant to silence me. Instead, it had become the countdown to their reckoning. 24 hours before the validation deadline, Graham Novak made his move. The formal request to New Camden was a masterpiece of corporate warfare. He didn't attack Novera directly, that would have been crass. Instead, Vertexis simply presented itself as a concerned alternate vendor who had noticed potential irregularities in the contract validation process. "We stand ready to serve New Camden's infrastructure needs," the letter concluded, "with a proven system and the original architect who designed it." I sat in Vertexis's war room, a conference space with walls of monitors showing real-time data feeds. Graham had assembled his best people, lawyers, engineers, project managers. They moved with the efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were doing. "Camden's procurement department is asking questions," reported Lisa, the head of business development. "They want to know why the validation is stalled." On my personal laptop, I watched Novera's diagnostic logs. They'd tried everything, spoofing my biometric data, attempting to roll back to earlier versions, even trying to bypass the entire validation protocol. Each attempt triggered more security flags. At 3 p.m., I activated the shadow contract from my secure connection. The effect was immediate. New Camden's validation system suddenly displayed a new status message. "Validation available, pending architect authorization. Architect of record, M. Ellis, original framework designer." My phone exploded with calls. I ignored them all except one. "Ms. Ellis." The voice belonged to Patricia Walsh, New Camden's chief procurement officer. "We're showing some unusual activity in our contract system. Your name appears as the architect of record, but Novera informed us you're no longer with the company." "That's correct. I was terminated 5 days ago." A pause. "But the system still recognizes your authorization? The Argent framework recognizes its creator. My employment status doesn't change the technical architecture." "I see. And are you willing to validate this contract?" "I'm no longer authorized to act on Novera's behalf. However, I now serve as Director of Infrastructure Architecture at Vertexis Global. We'd be happy to discuss alternatives." The silence stretched so long I wondered if we'd been disconnected. "Ms. Ellis," Patricia said finally, "are you telling me that Novera submitted a $2.3 billion contract that they cannot technically execute without you?" "I'm telling you that the security protocols I designed are working exactly as intended. They require the original architect's biometric validation for contracts of this magnitude. Novera chose to proceed without ensuring they had that validation." Another pause. "We'll need to review this with our legal team." Within an hour, New Camden issued a formal notice. Due to validation irregularities, the current contract submission would be suspended pending investigation. All qualified vendors were invited to submit proposals through an expedited process. The news hit the tech blogs by 4 p.m. Breaking. Novera's 2.3B Smart City contract in jeopardy. The stock market reacted instantly. Novera dropped 12% in after-hours trading. Graham walked into the war room carrying 2 cups of tea. He handed me one and sat down beside me. "You know they'll sue," he said. "Let them. I haven't violated any laws. I simply declined to provide personal biometric data to a company that no longer employs me." "And the shadow contract?" "Is a security feature, not sabotage. It preserved the integrity of the original design when unauthorized modifications were detected. Any good architect builds in safeguards." He smiled. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." At 6 p.m., Sarah, my former junior engineer, texted me, "Landon just called in all hands, says we're pivoting to aggressive recovery mode. Also, 5 senior engineers just submitted resignations. They know what really happened." I thought about Sarah, about the team I'd mentored, good people trapped in a bad situation. "Graham," I said, How many infrastructure engineers can Vertexis absorb? For the Camden project? As many as we need. You have people in mind. The ones who actually understand the system. The ones Landon would call legacy weight. Send me names. We'll make offers tomorrow. As the hours ticked down, I perfected Vertexis's proposal. Not just a bid for the contract, but a complete technical architecture that improved on my original design. I incorporated every lesson learned from 23 years of refinements. Every security enhancement Novera had been too short-sighted to implement. 18 hours to deadline. Novera's attempts grew more desperate. They even tried calling my elderly mother, asking her to convince me to do the right thing for the company. 12 hours. New Camden formally rejected Novera's submission due to inability to complete technical validation. 6 hours. Vertexis submitted our proposal, complete with my biometric validation pre-authorized. 3 hours. The first wave of Novera engineers accepted positions at Vertexis. 1 hour. Graham opened champagne as New Camden's initial review rated our proposal exemplary. 0 hour. The validation window closed. Novera's contract officially expired, worthless as the paper it was never printed on. My ghost in the system had done its job. Now it was time for resurrection. The boardroom at Novera Cortec looked like a war zone at 8:47 a.m. I watched it all through Sarah's laptop camera. She'd called me from a supply closet, whispering that I needed to see this. Through the glass walls, Landon Price stood at the head of the table, his usual composure shattered. His designer glasses were askew, his shirt untucked, gesturing wildly at a PowerPoint that no longer mattered. This is a coordinated attack, his voice carried even through the closed doors. Corporate espionage, we need to pursue criminal charges. Board members sat in stunned silence. Someone had leaked the real numbers. $2.3 billion contract lost. Stock down 23%. 7 senior engineers resigned. 3 major clients requesting contract reviews. Where's the legal team? Landon demanded. Where's IT? Someone explain how one disgruntled ex-employee can... She's not disgruntled. The interruption came from David Park, the CFO. She's the architect. The system recognized its creator. That's not espionage, Landon. That's poor planning. We own that system. We own a license to use it, a license that, according to our legal review this morning, may be revocable. The room erupted, board members shouting over each other, accusations flying, the beautiful digital displays showing nothing but error messages where contract confirmations should have been. 15 minutes. That's how long it took for everything to unravel. At 9:02 a.m., while Novera's leadership tore itself apart, I walked into Vertexis Global's headquarters through the main entrance. No sneaking through side doors, no hiding. The security guard smiled and handed me a new badge. Welcome, Ms. Ellis. Mr. Novak is waiting in the executive conference room. The New Camden representatives were already there, Patricia Walsh and her team, reviewing our proposal line by line. But Graham stood when I entered, and what he said next stopped everyone mid-sentence. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Vertexis's new Chief Executive Officer. I felt the room shift. This wasn't part of the plan. CEO was Graham's title, his company, his... Effective immediately. Graham continued, his rocket ship tie clip catching the light. I'm moving to chairman of the board. Margot Ellis has the technical vision and leadership experience to take Vertexis into the future. The New Camden project will be her first initiative as CEO. Patricia Walsh recovered first. Ms. Ellis, this is unexpected. Good unexpected or bad unexpected? I asked, taking the seat Graham offered at the head of the table. Considering you're the only person who seems to actually understand the infrastructure we need? Good. Very good. The contract review took 3 hours. Every question they asked, I answered with precision. No buzzwords, no hand-waving, no promises of future-forward solutions. Just solid architecture, realistic timelines. And a team I was already assembling from the best engineers in the industry. Many of them refugees from Novera's sinking ship. By noon, we had a preliminary agreement. By 2:30 p.m., New Camden's mayor held a press conference announcing Vertexis as their infrastructure partner. I stood beside him as cameras flashed, wearing the same blazer I'd worn to my last day at Novera, the day they thought they were erasing me. This partnership, the mayor said, represents the best of American innovation, not just new technology, but proven expertise. We're proud to work with CEO Ellis and the Vertexis team. CEO Ellis, after 23 years of being Margot from IT, or the infrastructure lady, I had a title that matched my contribution. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I glanced at it during the photo session. Margot, this is James from the Novera board. We need to discuss transition procedures. Please call immediately. Below that, another. This is unfair. You've destroyed everything we built together. L. Landon. Still thinking this was about him. Still not understanding that I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd simply taken my creation with me when I left. The destruction was all self-inflicted, the natural consequence of optimizing without understanding, of moving fast and breaking things that weren't theirs to break. Sarah texted from the supply closet. Security is escorting people out. Landon's been terminated. The board is cleaning house. Also, are you really hiring? Send me your resume, I replied. Same for anyone who wants to build instead of break. At 3:15 p.m., exactly 1 week after that birthday termination email, I stood in my new office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city where I'd spend the next 5 years building the infrastructure of the future. On my desk, Graham had left a small gift, a digital frame cycling through newspaper headlines. Vertexis wins 2.3B contract. Novera stock plummets after failed deal. Tech veteran Ellis named CEO in stunning reversal. But the last image wasn't a headline. It was a screenshot of New Camden's contract system, showing the validated agreement. At the bottom, in system font that couldn't be edited or erased, Contract Architect, Margot Ellis. 15 minutes to destroy an empire. A lifetime to build a better one. The revolution had been quieter than anyone expected, and infinitely more complete. The morning sun painted golden stripes across my new office floor. No champagne bottles cluttered the space, no congratulatory bouquets crowded my desk. Just clean surfaces, 3 monitors showing stable system metrics, and the quiet hum of an infrastructure running exactly as designed. I opened my laptop and pulled up the email that had arrived at 6 a.m., New Camden's final contract confirmation. Every page bore my digital signature, but it was the authentication footer that made me pause. Contract Architect, Margot Ellis System Designer. Margot Ellis Validation Authority. Margot Ellis Not Development Team. Not Vertexis Global. My name, repeated like a mantra across every technical specification, every security protocol, every line of code that would reshape a city. Sarah knocked and entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She'd started at Vertexis 3 days ago, along with 14 other engineers who'd followed me from Novera. Good people who understood that systems weren't just code, they were living things that needed gardeners, not disruptors. The New Camden test environment is up, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Running smoother than it ever did at... She caught herself. At the old place. It's okay to say Novera, I told her. It's not Voldemort. She laughed. But it was tinged with something else. Relief? Maybe. Or recognition. Did you always know it would end like this? I considered the question. Had I known, that morning when the authentication error locked me out, that I'd be sitting here 7 days later, that Landon Price would be job hunting while I ran a company, that a $2.3 billion contract would change hands with the quiet click of a biometric scanner? I knew they didn't understand what they were throwing away, I said finally. Everything else just followed from that. My desk phone rang, the landline Graham had insisted on installing. Real CEOs have real phones, he'd said. The caller ID showed a Manhattan number I didn't recognize. Margot Ellis. Ms. Ellis, this is Catherine Zhao from the Wall Street Journal. We're running a feature on the Novera Vertexis situation. Some are calling it the revenge of the architects. Care to comment? Revenge? Is that what this was? It felt more like restoration. Like watching a garden return to life after someone stopped poisoning the soil. There's no revenge here, I said. Just an architect ensuring her buildings stand on solid foundations. Vertexis is focused on the future, not the past. After I hung up, I turned to Sarah. Make sure the team knows, no gloating about Novera, no leaked emails, no told-you-so posts on LinkedIn. We build. We don't tear down. She nodded and left. Through my window, I could see Novera's towers in the distance. Word was they'd hired a crisis management firm, were promising a complete transformation. New leadership, new vision, new everything. Except they couldn't buy new foundations. Those took time, expertise, and respect for the people who built them. My computer chimed with a notification. The first phase of the new Camden project had passed its initial benchmark, data flowing through the Argent framework like water through a perfectly designed aqueduct. On another screen, recruitment emails poured in from engineers around the country. People who'd been labeled legacy at their companies, who'd been optimized out for the sin of understanding how things actually worked. We'd hire the best of them, not because they were young or old, innovative or traditional, because they were architects, builders, people who understood that some things, trust, expertise, elegance in design, couldn't be disrupted, only earned. On my desk, beneath the contract papers and system diagrams, lay the birthday cards my team had slipped under my door that last day at Novera. I'd kept them. These small reminders that even in a company that had forgotten my value, individual people hadn't. One card had a quote from Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. Novera had made me feel disposable, so I'd disposed of myself and taken my life's work with me. The sun climbed higher, warming the office Graham had said was built for a leader. But I wasn't thinking about leadership or revenge or the 12% bump in Vertexis's stock price. I was thinking about infrastructure, about the millions of people who would depend on systems I designed, about the engineers who would learn that experience wasn't a liability but an asset, about the next 50 years of things I had yet to build. They'd tried to erase my name from their history. Instead, it was etched into every contract, every system, every success they'd never achieve without me. My name was never erased. It was just waiting to be read aloud. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this tale of standing up for your worth resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever faced a situation where your experience was undervalued? I'd love to hear your story.